sweetheart.
Hi, darling.
Well, here we are.
Hi, folks. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm all right.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm Frank.
Bambi.
Hi. I thought maybe it would be nice to talk about our first date movie.
Was it really Dead of Night? Was it our first?
Our first date movie.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Because I remember other movies where, and I think it was actually like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, because I remember trying to hold your hand and how your eyes were absolutely glued to the screen.
Yeah.
And how I was like slobbering over your hand, because
I remember this too.
I did do that. I did kind of
I remember
slobber.
This. I actually remember this story.
I did slobber.
I do remember this.
And I'm sad to say, you're not the only little boy.
No, wait, just hold up now. We were fine until we got to this part, but let's just hold up for a point. Let's rewind.
Okay.
Back a bit, because I actually do recall that. I actually do remember.
Okay,
and I do remember that it was Frankenstein. I do remember that this happened during Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that it happened exclusively during Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, because I think it also possibly happened also during Before I Hang and The Invisible Ray and
Curse of the Demon.
And The Curse of the Demon and The Devil Commands and Black Friday and The Frozen Ghost and
quite
Calling
possibly.
Dr. Death
I was quite fond of you. I was quite fond of you, and
all of which I definitely have recollections of seeing in your living room at a very tender age.
I was very worried about you.
Yeah.
In those years that we parted. Yes,
I
the years that we were apart, I was very worried about you, because, I was kind of aggressive with you. When I was holding your hand, and you were very, very focused on the screen, not terribly focused on me, and.
I was a little young.
You were young, but I would tell my friends, I said, that poor little boy, that poor little boy who would forever and forever associate women and horror. And goodness knows what he grew up to be.
Well, yes, and
and lo and behold, you grew up to be you. It was just fine. It was just fine.
Thank goodness that worked out okay for everybody concerned.
But I did. I always thought that I damaged you in some irrevocable...
Again, yes.
Some irrevocable way that could not be undone.
This is all potentially true, but still and all.
Sorry, not sorry. Is that what they say?
Yeah, mostly not.
Sorry, not sorry.
Mostly not. Emphasis on the not, most assuredly. Well, so we haven't really set the context properly for all this romantic meanderings
living room mauling
we've been doing. So we were in third grade when all this happened. We were in third grade, attending PS 87 on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and
it was so
and
cute.
so go ahead, tell me what you remember. Like your earliest recollections
of you?
Yeah. Like, do you remember the very first time you saw me? I don't think I've ever actually asked you this particular question, but what is your earliest recollection that you have, or cluster of recollections?
It had to have been third grade, right?
Well, it was third grade, because that was
the first year that you were there.
Mrs. Weinbaum's class. That's right.
There were a couple of cute boys in third grade.
Again,
there was Danny Koch, who had cute little freckles. But
trying to keep us.
But
yeah.
You had these curls, and a Monster magazine. And Danny Koch, he might have had freckles, but he didn't have a Monster magazine.
See, this is how the role of contraband, play in courtship. I digress. Carry on.
So as we know, I saw your Monster magazine, and that was my in, because
Indeed.
My daddy has a whole room full of Monster magazines, and you remember that.
And monster movies.
And monster
not
movies.
Just he did have lots of periodicals and of course reference materials, being a writer, but mainly, my lord, the films. And I mean, Yeah, I have a very clear recollection of you saying to me, "Oh, you like monster movies? My daddy's got a room full of monster movies. Why don't you come over on Friday? He's showing Dead of Night." First of all, I'd never heard of Dead of Night, so already my circuit's like going, "Huh? Dead of Night? What is this?" And then the bit about my dad's got a room full of monster movies. This is 1966?
1968.
68. Who the hell heard of anybody having monster movies or any kind of movies in their house at this juncture? I mean, that'd be like, something landing from outer space. The only people who had movies were movie theaters. So this is essentially what I'm trying to say is this is a massive amount of cognitive dissonance coming at me all at once, right? A horror movie I've never heard of, and the notion that somebody has films in their house is sort of like 1-2 punch. Wow, I said yes, of course, yeah, sure.
Of course.
And, how could I refuse an offer?
Join me in the Great Unwashed on a Saturday night.
So we lived on 79th Street, and I lived on 76th Street, and so it was a quick jaunt over, and I sat down and proceeded to have my mind absolutely blown by Dead of Night, which was, by the end of it, it was one of the most frightening things I'd ever seen in my tender life,
It was the first movie that actually scared the bejesus out of me. And I was a really, really tough kid. I mean, I was on movie sets with, people with their eyeballs falling out and, disembodied corpses. And that was just a day were good. That was just Saturday, that was just Tuesday.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, it was just Tuesday.
Yeah, good parenting in action. But
I really was not scared easily. I was a pretty tough kid. And I was brought up not to be afraid because I was brought up to appreciate the art of making a film and to separate yourself from the film.
That's an important point, and that's also an important point that Famous Monsters did too, because they not only hooked the kids in with the pictures of the scary monsters and all like that, but then they talked about the makeup artists and the camera people and the craft of doing it, and also the literary roots of all this stuff. H.G. Wells and Jules Verne and Ray Bradbury and all this. I've heard about all those people for the first time in those pages. But the demystification, of it, yeah, for sure, it makes, it makes it less scary, but it also opens your eyes to the idea that you can make magic out of ordinary things. But this movie was really special. It was the first, what they call the portmanteau type of thing, like 5 in 1.
5 stories, 4 different directors, but tied together by this man that was coming to a house for a job that he was going to do. Business meeting, and it was peculiar. He thought he'd been to this house before, and he was meeting a group of people, and everybody seemed to have a story, and then they were all interweaved, and then it all just became a horrible
nightmare from which there is no escape. Yes.
And this is a lovely, it's a lovely weekend in the country. Like, what could possibly go wrong?
Right.
And it starts off with a story about a race car driver that's in a terrible accident and winds up in a hospital, and wakes up at a certain time of day and looks out the window and sees a
Just room for one inside, sir.
Yeah.
And look at me, I'm already getting...
Yeah, goosebumps already.
I like just the memory of it, because I see it with my 8-year-old eyes. I see it with my 8-year-old eyes every single time. And it's so sad because I show this film to people of another generation, and they're so jaded from Twilight Zones and Buffy the Vampire Slayers and they just don't appreciate the simplicity,
the
simplicity
so
of this simple story. And
well, it's so powerful, and it's such an iconic thing. It was the first.
Right, it was the first.
It's been replicated so many. It's been copied so many times. So it's become
it's
like
lost
part of the.
yeah.
It's become part of the iconic, for better or worse.
So the second story is a quaint little ghost story with Sally Ann House, who you might know as Truly Scrumptious from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. But this is when she was a mere teenager. And it involves a Christmas party and a game of sardines, which is a game that I always played as a child at Christmas parties at my cousin Sarah's.
Got you!
It's all right. I'll go quietly.
Shh! Now, I'll stop here with you. When somebody else finds us, they pack in two, like sardines.
I won't go into great detail. They did cut it for some reason in the American version, but it made absolutely no sense because later on, the main character speaks of something terrible happening to this young girl, and without the story in it, it would make absolutely no sense at all. Things that the man is saying just seem to miraculously, somehow come true, and they're talking about other stories, and there's one story that they were going to take out of the American version because it had Basil Radford and Norton Wayne, which was a comedic couple that were in The Lady Vanishes and a bunch of British films, and they were they did a comedic episode in this horror film that they just thought, the American audiences aren't going to like it, and so they're going to remove it from the movie. But without it just takes out this crucial piece of information that you need later on about a story of a man that you didn't know that died.
Right.
It's very important.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to keep it in, but they took it out. They put it back in,
and all the versions currently exist have it.
Yes,
so.
now they all have it.
Yeah.
If you don't know who they are, go watch The Lady Vanishes.
It's like not really so much like an Abbott and Costello, really, but
no, they're just so British, and they love cricket, and they're just they're gentlemen's comedians. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They're gentlemen, not carry-on types.
Yeah, not broad.
They're
not
just sophisticated, cricket-loving gentlemen.
And then comes the final episode.
Which is Hugo and Michael Redgrave.
One of the greatest performances in cinema.
And there have been a lot of and Anthony Hopkins did a great job in Magic, and there was the Twilight Zone one. Who is it?
Cliff Robertson.
Cliff Robertson did a great job, but this, I think, is the definitive ventriloquist dummy, and we haven't even talked about the mirror one.
Yeah, I know. We'll come back to the middle episode.
That scared me so much that.
Yeah, in fact, let's talk about the mirror.
The mirror one?
The mirror episode.
The mirror episode, it's very simple. It's the man is going to get married, and his fiancée buys him a mirror, and he sees a different environment every time he looks into it, and it makes him slowly lose his mind, and he sort of becomes possessed by the other room in this house, where the room becomes the real room, and his own room not the room at all. He's losing himself. He's losing himself inside the room. And then he finds out why. She finds out what's wrong with the mirror, and there's nothing wrong with the mirror. And then again, the goosebumps. And after I saw this movie for the first time, my little friend Jimmy Kaminsky, who was 8 years old at the time, had given me a mirror that was a frog for my birthday, for my 8th birthday, and I had to cover it with a sheet because I could not look in the mirror for weeks after I saw the movie, and after you left that night, I couldn't sleep, and my father had to run Beanie and Cecil cartoons on an endless loop for about an hour and a half until I fell asleep on the couch, and he carried me into bed.
Yeah.
It was the first movie that I absolutely terrified me, but it was also a movie that, I guess when you're that terrified, it's important to face your fear, because I must have seen that movie 100 times before I was an adult, because I kept I needed to see it again. I just needed to see it again and again and again and share it with people because I did think it was the scariest movie I had ever seen.
Yeah.
And I still think that the shock value, especially the last sequence, the last sequence, which I don't want to give away.
The
what
last
what
10 minutes
happens.
of the movie, basically, where it all comes together.
Yeah, when all the shit hits the fan.
It just all comes together.
Yeah. Is so frightening. That's when everybody just throws their popcorn.
Pretty much. And you know, it's interesting listening to you talk about it, how its power is undiminished no matter how many times you see it, and no matter how many times you've seen the derivatives of it. Probably because of when you saw it and that it was the first, and so it made its imprint on you, like it did on so many other people. You know, like Michael Redgrave is working without a template, right? After this movie, everybody making these kinds of stories is working with this as the template.
If they've seen it.
If they've seen it. Yeah,
if they've seen it.
You know, 1945, by the time, you know, the 70s rolled around and all like that.
It wasn't that accessible.
Yeah.
It wasn't such an accessible film.
Yeah.
You know, it was British. You know, it had an American release. It wasn't particularly popular. You never heard of it.
This is true. I never saw it on TV.
That's right. It wasn't on television a lot.
In fact, I think to this day, the only place I've seen it on TV is Turner Classic Movies.
There you go. So, you know, they didn't... So people would...
Or on home video, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it did come out on video. It was terribly expensive when it first came out on video. I think we paid like $45 to get it on home video. And
it was on a double bill with the Queen of Spades.
Yes,
also.
yes, it was on DVD. We had it on DVD. We paid for that too. I can't recommend it highly enough.
Oh, it's
and
a
I can't
masterpiece.
watch it. I can't watch it enough times, and I will never ever get tired of it.
Yeah. And
it will never not scare me. It will never not give me chills.
Yeah.
And
I say the same.
Yeah, but I will never not feel the same way that I felt when I saw it on the living room floor with you. And I don't remember if that was the actual first time I saw it. It might have been, or it might have been my second time.
I think it may have been. See, I have the atmosphere that you knew the lay of the land already.
I might have.
Because you're like, this is going to scare the bejesus out of you. You have no idea what you're in for. You're really in for it. I have that recollection of it. Because
there are some films that were like that.
Yeah.
You know, like Curse of the Demon was like that for me too. As I knew it was scary, but it's only scary in like certain sections of it, and so I would wait for those sections so that I could almost watch the person watching it.
Right. And so you'd enjoy it vicariously. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think I knew of Curse of the Demon before I came to your house because of the Carlos Clarence book. Mm-hmm. But I there were no photos from Dead of Night in there, I don't think. So, I mean, I had nothing to go on. It was so I saw it completely cold. And experienced, those stories for the first time, completely.
So now I'll tell you.
So I had maximum impact.
I'll tell you the one story that's connected to Dead of Night with my dad.
Okay.
That just,
okay.
It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense.
Okay.
But it was a Dead of Night experience, and I love it. So my dad and I were in London. And we loved to just get on a bus for no reason to go into some ridiculous little town and just get up and get ice cream and walk around the little town and then get on the bus in the other direction and go back and go to our hotel. So we got on the bus and the little guys come along with the change thing to get your tickets. Mm-hmm. And my dad only had a £1 note and the guy goes, "Oh, don't have no change, governor." And gave him the £1 note. And we didn't, so we gave him the £1 note and gave him his change. Cling, cling, cling. We got our tickets. And we sat. And then we got off the bus. And we got off at a certain stop. We walked for like 5 minutes and it started to pour. We thought, well, this is dumb. Let's just get on the next bus and keep going into the next town. So we got on the very next bus that came by. We got on the bus and we walked to the back of the bus, and the bus driver came, and we had change in our hand. And the bus driver came, looked at us, got a pound note, got a not change, governor. He said the exact same thing. We looked at him. It was the same bus driver. Same bus driver.
Yeah.
And he said the same thing to us. And my father and I just looked at each other.
Just room for one inside, sir.
And we thought, are we going to get off this bus?
Uh-huh.
Is this bus going to go crash?
Uh-huh.
Is this?
I'd have gotten off the bus. I think,
we didn't get off the bus.
No, you didn't?
We didn't get
Brave
off the
souls.
bus, but
Brave
we just
souls.
like, just like,
I'd have you in a situation like this, you got to play through.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, it's just one of those things. And then I'd gone into this guy, Philip Jenkinson's house, and he lived in this cottage in England. And I walked straight into the house, and I hung up my coat. And Philip Jenkinson just looked at me and said, "How'd you know that? Nobody knows where to hang up our coats." I was like, and it was like I had been there before,
Mm-hmm.
but I hadn't been there before. Mm-hmm. And my dad just says, "She's been here before." In her dream. In her dream. I've had a couple of things like that when I just walked into a house and went, da-da-da-da-da, hang up your coat, or put it in the umbrella stand, or because we're British and we just do things like that.
Right.
Anyway, that's my Dead of Night story. And I used to tell it a lot better.
That was fine. There was nothing wrong with that.
Tell it better.
There was nothing wrong with that.
All right.
Have we covered off on everything? I mean, Michael Redgrave's performance is just this
It's
virtuoso.
stellar.
This man coming slowly unglued.
The other man too.
Mervyn Johns. He's also Bob Cratchit in A Christmas Carol with Alistair Sim, and he's the father of Glynis Johns.
And then there's this African American singer, Elizabeth Welch, who comes in singing this song. It's just like the whole atmosphere of this nightclub that he's working in.
And there's that whole tableau of him sitting at the table with the dummy in his hand and everybody else, and it's just like this weird scene that everything looks perfectly normal except for the ventriloquist dummy sitting there, almost like it was his child.
Yeah. We don't want to give too much away because we really want you, if you haven't seen it, to see it. And now it's accessible.
It is.
And then when I was a child, it wasn't accessible, so it was my in. That is what I got to share with people. That was just this wonderful gift that my dad gave me that I got to give to others. Gift. It's the gift that kept on giving for years and years, and now we get to share it. Sure. You get to watch it yourself on Turner Classic Movies.
Yeah, and the other thing is that Reese Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton, who do Inside Number 9, are huge devotees of this film, Dead of Night, and in fact, their very first episode of their very first season was Sardines.
Oh, right, which is from
right, mm-hmm. Which is from Dead of Night.
Dead of Night.
Yeah. So now they are always happy to talk about Dead of Night.
I would recommend you watch all of their work. All of it.
Great. Yeah. Superb. Superb. Yeah. If you and so if you like that sort of thing, you're a fan of those sorts of programs and the Twilight Zone and. Episodic
Night Gallery
anthology is the word I'm searching for. Series. This would be up your alley.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, kids, we'll see if this if anybody's interested in all this. We'll talk about other stuff. The Innocents, Curse of the Demon, specific films, time periods like the 20s and the silent.
All right. Well,
like
let's just
horror films,
take it as it goes.
Yeah. So. We could also like take a poll, see what people want us to talk about.
Sterling Hayden. That's
Sterling Hayden
that's a
is
good.
a
That's
topic.
that's a whole series.
Yeah. So
I'll dress up.
we may both dress up. All right. See ya next time. Bye.
Thanks.